Okay, hello everyone. Hello everyone. I'm not sure whether we're up and live yet. So if you're watching this back, sorry for this rather garbled introduction. Blah. Okay, I can see we've been streaming for 40 seconds. Hello everyone. I hope you are fine. So I just need to change this to Sons of Horus Seminar. Hope you are all well today. It's a pretty horrible day here, so I've been looking forward to this all day. So I just need to share this to the page. We can get up and running on Sons of Horus. So I just need to post this up. More filler for you. I should really tell a joke at the start of these things, just to get in the mood. I'm not very funny. Okay. So I'm just sharing the link to the Patreon page. Everything's taking a little longer because I'm streaming this. Come on. Edit post. Okay, so we're going to give it 5 minutes while we allow people time to join in the fun. To see you guys there. Okie dokie. So today we are tackling the Sons of Horus. I have a couple of example miniatures here. So we have this guy who is a Sons of Horus either champion or praetor. So this is a really nice, so let's zip in on this guy. Let's get a good angle for this guy. Hopefully I should zoom in soon. Good, excellent angle. Okay, we can work with that. Okay, and we also have a Sons of Horus just there in Terminator. So I'm just rearranging to get a comfortable angle to film and paint. Sorry, I can only do these adjustments once we are live, so I'm not sure how it'll come up on the camera. So hopefully that should all be evident for everybody. If you are watching this live, please introduce yourself on the live chat. Say hello, chime in, any questions, please feel free to whip them along. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. It doesn't only have to be about Sons of Horus. That's what these seminars are. They're more of an open platform to discuss any miniature painting. Okay, the sound you may hear in the background is the filtration unit. I need to have that on so I'm not breathing in too many chemical fumes. Hope you guys understand and forgive that droning in the background you can hear. So while we waited for people to come along and really get kicked up, I'm just going to undercoat these miniatures. So when it comes to Sons of Horus, I always undercoat my miniatures black. It gives us a nice base coat to work from, and then we can modulate it with white. So the primer I'm using is scale 75. I'll just pop that into the description. Scale 75 black primer. Okay. So I can see 5 guys watching. Oh, it's a bit sexist of me to assume that you're all guys. I don't think we have a woman signed up for the Patreon. Oh. Should look into the diversity of that. But anyway, so I'm using scale 75 black primer. pop that into cap, and I am mixing this up with Forge World thinning solution. It's just isopropyl alcohol. So I'm going to mix this up. And I'm just going to add a layer of black onto this. So nothing exciting at this stage. Okay, so this may be a common problem people encounter. When you apply a primer onto a miniature, especially a resin, you may see it start to split, start to come apart and not bind onto the surface properly. Don't worry, just give it a very light coating first time around, and the second time should be much easier applying. So you can see there's little bobbles, but there's no need to worry. Don't keep hammering at the surface. If you are using a aerosol can, you can buy automotive car primer. This is slightly stronger formulated, and it will give you a much tighter bind onto your miniature. So I tend to use this for larger pieces, especially knights. So something like this, knight carapace. I've undercoated this grey. This is a automotive car spray bought from Halfords. I'm sure you guys can find your own. You can source your own. That is what that is. And then you can undercoat it grey and then undercoat it black on top. The grey primer allows for greater grip on the miniatures. So unfortunately, even though these models have been washed with hot soapy water and Swarfiga, so Swarfiga is a degreasing agent that you can buy in the UK in most places like B&Q hardware stores. If you look for any kind of degreasing agent, that will also help you clean up your miniatures. It's quite light stuff. It's not industrial, so you won't hurt yourself using it. You can buy pre-hardcore degreasing agents that come in metal tins. Again, they can be used, but you have to be aware that it may make the resin slightly rubbery. Just be careful and test it. Test on a spare piece of resin rather than your Sons of Horus Praetor model, for example. Okay, great. 9 people watching. Guys, please introduce yourself. If you're watching this live, please put a comment down below. Say who you are. Just say hello to the group. Let's get a conversation going. I'd love to field any questions you may have, or anything rattling around in your mind. That's the beauty of these seminars. We're able to get a dialogue going, rather than me just yammer on at you in the videos. So I normally undercoat all my miniatures with the airbrush now. I find it gives me much better control over the amount that it binds onto the surface and exactly where it's been applied. Aha! Okay, brilliant. We have some hellos. Ben Goodrat, good morning. Zemos, oh, hiya. I believe you are a new patron, Zemos, so really good to have you on board. Mas Multi-Thomas, hello. Andrea De La Sol, hello there. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me for this Sons of Horus masterclass. This will just be for infantry. I do have a few tanks in the works, but they will probably be independent videos, unless you would like a follow-up tuition service, a follow-up seminar in the next seminar section. It can be very easily arranged. Okay, so like always, I've just undercoated the miniatures, and now the next stage. So I'm not sponsored by anybody. This is an old joke now. Anybody who's taken the lesson with me knows this joke, but hell, I'll tell it anyway. So I'm not sponsored by anybody, but if I were to be, I'd want it to be by a hairdryer company. I use this more than any other tool, more than airbrushes, more than my paints, more than my paintbrushes. So just off camera, you're about to hear a very loud, annoying sound while I turn this on, and just help the drying process with these guys. Hello Rich, good to join us. So I'm going to give this another coat with the black. I'm not doing anything terribly too exciting at this stage, but as you can see, the black is now binding onto that surface much nicer. It's going on there, no problem. Okay. Hello Daniel. Oh, hiya. Right. Oh, brilliant. Right, we have a bit of a discussion going on now. Brilliant stuff. Thank you so much for joining me, guys, for the Sons of Horus tutorial. Not doing anything too exciting now, just adding a primer. So, when it comes to Sons of Horus, we need to consider two colours above all others. Black and green. If you manage to get the black and green right, it's incidental how you tackle the metallics, even though I will give some suggestions for this. As well as, oh, don't worry. Cannoli Crusader, unfortunately, his kid's a little bit ill, and he wasn't able to join me for a session earlier. I always tell my clients, I always tell everybody, in fact, that painting miniatures should be very, very low on your list of priorities. It is no problem whatsoever rearranging lessons or moving things around. I'm always very aware that this is a niche thing within a niche hobby, so I'm just delighted to have anybody along with me to paint. But yep, that's not a problem. So green and black. Get green and black right, you are good. And unfortunately, we have Justarian and we have a champion to demonstrate these techniques on. And I will be going through the pre-coating technique. And I will be going through familiar techniques to you guys if you have seen any of the other video tutorials or seminars of how to tackle black. And we'll also explore how to achieve good weathering effects, what we can and what we really should stay away with Sons of Horus. So off camera, I'm just cleaning up. I'm just cleaning up the airbrush. For this, I'm using Medea Com Art airbrush cleaner, just placing that inside with an old brush. I'm never sure exactly how much detail to tell you guys, whether you've seen these before or whether you haven't, but I figure if you're brand new to this and you haven't seen anything before, I'll just dive straight in and just explain everything. So that's the reason why you may hear a bit of repetition from me, especially old jokes. So Ben said he could eat a cannoli. Yeah, I think we all could. Cannolis, I believe a cannoli's a pastry. Pastries are deadly. I love pastries. Although my favourite thing about visiting New York is the pizza. Can't get pizza like that well, especially where I live, Swansea. So I'm just cleaning up this. So so all you guys in the comment section, let me know what you're working on at the moment. Hi Frank. Frank's joining us. So let me know what you're working on, whether you're Sons of Horus fans, whether you'll be applying any of this to your own collections. So again, while you do that, I'm just going to hit it with a hairdryer again. Okie dokie. So let's go through the pre-shading technique again. So we've undercoated the miniature black. Now when we paint this miniature, if we just paint it from a black base coat, all our values on our colours will be very low. So let's just take a red, for example. So if we applied this red on a black base coat, it would make the red appear darker. That's because the saturation lessens the more we get into black. That's when people struggle with value and contrast. So by adding a zenithal layer on top of this, a zenithal highlight layer of white, we are helping the colours expand, and we're helping the colours get into the higher reaches of the value saturation triangle. Now this may seem like a bit gobbledygook to you guys, but it's worth putting these words in now, just so we get a greater understanding as we go along. So we can think of colours as being part of a triangle. At the top we have maximum value, which is pure white, minimum value, which is pure black, and then maximum saturation, which is our hue colour. And between these 3 points is every single possible intonation of this colour. So hopefully it will become a bit clearer as we go along. But we want to give those higher saturated colours something to grip onto, to make it easier for us to get into those values. And we do that by adding a white colour on top. Now white is a bit of a difficult colour, because especially through an airbrush it will cause it to bind up, and whoever says that airbrushing saves you time is a liar, because the amount of time you spend cleaning clogs out of your airbrush it's a lot of time. And white and black are two of those colours which unfortunately do clog up the airbrush quite a lot. But I have found that Medea Com Art White is the best white on the market for this. I know people do have difficulties buying this online, but I know that Amazon have it, and I do know that you can buy through airbrushes.com, which is an international trading company. So let's pop this into the comments section. Medea Com Art White. So every colour I use, I'll be writing it into the video's description, so you're able to go back and reference it when you like. Righto, so we have a few questions here. We have a few comments rather. Custodes, we're looking to start a new legion as well, from Daniel. Oh, you'll be loving this month's video then, where we're tackling the Custodes Dreadnought. Andrea De La Sol, working on my Sons of Horus, so this would be perfect for you. Canoli, I'm starting the Primaris Imperial Fists army. Wow, yellow is one of those colours you really want to make a breakthrough with. Excellent place for a lesson as well, I feel. Besides that, I've been working on Orcs, which is extremely time-consuming. Yeah, tell me about it. Orcs, a horde army. I can't do it. I just haven't got the time. Stuart. Hi, Stuart. Good to be here. Stuart's from Essex. Just started the 30k Thousand Suns force. Brilliant stuff. So, Stuart, will you be going for the matte red colour, or will you be going for that shiny effect? Rich, working on 40k Dark Angels, I'm sorry. Hoping today's green lessons also transfer over to the darker green. Okay, I will touch on that to see how we can do. Okay, so Mass Multi-Thomas. Miles, I'm wondering if you've undercoated the base or not. If not, why? So, the bases won't... the bases are separate. I have resin bases for this particular... This is a commission piece for a gentleman. And he sent me along resin bases, and I've simply glued these onto the plastic bases for something to hold on to. So there's no need for me to concentrate on the bases to detail them, but thanks for picking up on that, because I would not have mentioned it. Okay, so Medea Com Art White, it needs a bit of a shake-up. Added white into here. And as always, add a bit of thinner, no matter what colour we are using, just add a touch of thinner with every one, just to help clogs. Okay. If I put that as the centre, okay. So, even though we are using zenithal highlighting principles, we aren't being hidebound to them. We feel free to go beyond that. So instead of a zenithal highlighting principle, we need to think of highlighting the miniature in the first white stage as adding volume to the armour plates. So if you're a bit confused over where exactly to place your highlights and shadows, just do it simply from above. Quick spray, that's all we need. Now as you can see, if we were sticking to solely zenithal highlighting principles, which is lighting from above, most of the miniature would still be in darkness. We only have our higher values right at the very top, which doesn't give a very interesting overall appearance to the miniature. So instead, we're going to be a bit more intelligent with how we apply colour. We can fade this down and highlight any aspects of the miniature we want to bring to the fore. I just want a very light all over coat of the white. I don't want anything more than that. It looks quite grey and quite indistinct for the first coating of it. Anything more, we don't want to leave the airbrush linger on any area. So I'm just going to whip this off camera, hit it with a hairdryer. Okay, and then our second layer coming in with a white. Again, as you can see, hopefully that will. It's a much brighter white. It's a much cleaner white that we have going on here. So I'm just going to finish off the values. Hit the head. Shoulder pads. Okay, that's all I want for this section. So I've defined the values of the miniature, I've added depth to the armour, I've sketched in the light and shadow. If you don't like any aspect of this miniature, of how you sketched it, well, it's very easy to correct in the subsequent stages. This is a more free-form sketch layer where we can experiment with safety, because it's very easy to change them later on. So I'm just going to hit this with a hairdryer once again. Okay, I'm going to empty out the white from my airbrush, and it allows me to see what's going on in the comments. Okie dokie. So what we got going on here? So Cannoli Crusader, totally random question regarding weathering powders. Do you find any use for MIG's pigment fixer and thinner for washes, or do you stick to using water and varnish for application? So I haven't had much experience with MIG, but pigment fixer is ideal. It is essential for fixing the pigment in place. Without it, you'll find when you open up your figures case, when you go to game, it's just full of pigment and it's gone everywhere, and all your miniatures are covered in that stuff. So it does need some kind of sealer or primer, varnish on top. The fixer fixes it in place. You can make a solution for yourself using, I believe it's gloss varnish and, oh gosh, what's the name of it? Gloss varnish and, my mind's completely gone blank. Artist Spirit. God, wow, that was horrible. My mind just went completely blank. Yeah, so that you can make a pigment fixer using gloss varnish and Artist Spirit, Artist Turpentine. You can find it in most craft stores, and yeah, varnish it afterwards as well. Give it a matte varnish. You have to bear in mind that when you apply a varnish on top of a weathering powder, it will become darker in appearance. So always work slightly lighter than what you may initially want to end up with. Okay, so Mass Multi Thomas asked, do you always start with the light at the top and then add the saturated values, or was that just for an example? We'll be able to see during this demonstration, but on the whole, yes. And it does depend on the project. With Sons of Horus, they do have a slightly more desaturated green colour to them, so which we'll be getting onto now. For the next coat, I want to add... Oh wow, we're already 25 minutes in. Holy hell. That went quick. So I did advertise this as being an 1 hour, but I think we'll stray a little bit over that. So for the next layer, we will be using Lupercal Green. So we've established our light and shadow and base tones, and now I want the base tone of colour, which will be Lupercal Green. So I'm just going to give this a damn good shake. Just add in some of this. Forge or thinner. Yep, so let's write this down in the description. Forge or Lupercal Green. And this is the kind of thinness we're looking to achieve. So let's add some of this. So it's halfway between a wash, halfway between a regular acrylic colour. So, once over, we just want a very light coat over the entire thing. I know the shoulder pads will be black, just for demonstration purposes. It's nice to see how we can highlight and shade in a colour for this. It's a nice open space for us to exploit. But I will be painting over. I will probably be painting over it black. Or maybe leaving a line of green. I think that might be quite cool. So as you can see, it's very light. Very, very light. When people tell you to thin your paints, they're not kidding. That's what we want for our first layer. Always work up in thin, gradual layers. We don't want to overload the colour on any particular aspect, any particular area, because we'll just lose the effect and it'll become quite clumpy, it'll start to spread out, it'll just look horrible. Just blast this with a hairdryer. Then second layer. So as you can see, I've gone a little bit too thick, believe it or not. On that aspect then, it's down a pool in an area. That's a big no-no. We do not want that. So, I'm just going to take myself away, hit it with a hairdryer. Third layer. Oh, you know, it's always the case when it comes to painting something on camera. I see the mold lines on a miniature. Damn it! I thought I was so particular with this miniature because I knew I'd be painting it on camera. Live, of all things. Damn. So in order to correct that, I'll just scrape a knife over it and then reapply a dark layer, then Lupercal Green. It's not such a big deal. It's just annoying that it happens to be on a live feed for this thing. Okay. So that's my base coated marine. Hit it with a hairdryer again. That's what we have going on. So as it dries slightly, let's have a look at the comments. So Stuart with his 1,000 Suns will be going for a shiny effect. Good stuff. I prefer to do 1,000 Suns shiny as well. And yeah, I gotta reveal this now, to hell with it. I will be painting an Amon for next month's video tutorials. So a complete start to finish on the Horus Heresy character Amon. You'll be able to see that as part of the video pledge. So I think you'll get a lot from that, Stuart. Daniel, have you had any bad experience with forge oil paints? I've had some serious discrepancies in the same paint consistency and colour from them. Personally, no, I haven't had any problems with them. I make sure I give them a damn good shake before every session. The metallics I find aren't great. I much prefer using other metallic ranges from Vallejo and Scale 75, for example. And their clear paints, forge oil clear paints, aren't the best either. I prefer using Tamiyas. But the actual acrylic paints, I've had no problems using. Mass Multi-Thomas asks, do you purposefully leave certain areas black here on the inside of the legs? No, I cover the entire surface with this colour. But because there's an underlying black colour there, it kind of drinks in the value. It drinks in the saturation. As you can see on the shoulder pad, the parts at the bottom are much darker than the parts at the top. And that's the reason why we've added a white zenithal highlight on top of this to help us up with those higher values. Cannoli, mole lines always sneak up. Yeah, tell me about it. Ugh. So Daniel asks, that's one of the ones I've had issues with, metallics and clears. Yeah, I haven't had the best experience using metallics or clears from Forge World's range. The normal acrylic colours I've found work fine. Right, so what is the next colour? Sons of Horus Green. How to get that Sons of Horus Green? Back in the good old days, you had to make up your own solution. So it was created using a grey colour. So whenever you add grey to a colour, you desaturate it. And whenever you use grey with a colour, you create a slightly more natural, nuanced look to the miniature. It gives it a much more militaristic, realistic feel to it. Now we do have other types of green. So we have things like Lupercal green we've used. I can't remember the other greens. Oh, Sons of Horus Green. Okay, I believe this is the other green in Forge World Selection. As you can see how it's separated, I don't use this colour an awful lot. It's not, in my mind, it's not a very nice colour. If I could get away with saying that. Yeah, to hell with this, my channel. It's not a very nice colour. So I avoid this. I don't use it that much. So, in order to highlight this miniature, in order to highlight Sons of Horus, I like using a grey in there. So I go with, let's drag up my greys. I like using a desaturated grey colour, which means there isn't much in the way of colour with the grey. I know it's an odd thing to say with grey, you think black and white, that's it. But not all greys are created equal. So you'll have something like sombre grey, which has quite a lot of purple and turquoise in the undertone. You can see it's a very unusual looking grey, whereas we have, in comparison, medium sea grey, which has a lot more beige in the undertone. So you see two greys, but very, very different aspects. So for this, I like using medium sea grey for our first highlight layer. So I'm just shaking this off camera, giving it a damn good shake. Perfect time to look at any questions. Nothing so far. Oh, 12 people watching. I think this is our most popular seminar so far. So if you haven't introduced yourselves already, please feel free to dive in the discussion, ask any questions you like. It doesn't have to be about this tutorial, it could be about anything that's on your mind. Rightio, so I haven't got rid of the underlying layer, it's still there. So the Lupercal green, and to it I'm adding medium sea grey, which has quite a lot of beige in it, so it's a lighter colour. I've just dropped my thing on the floor. Now you may find that across an army that the greens have a slightly different consistency from one another. That's not to worry. The latter stages of this painting will give uniformity to what we are trying to achieve. Right now we're just trying to establish light and shadow. This might be a bit too grey. Yeah, so I'm just going to add a little bit more Lupercal green. and I'm just re-sketching over the lines we first put down. So generalised all over zenithal spray. Nothing too fancy. Nothing too hard there. Just to make sure the lighting's okay. Okay, so I'm just going to dump out this mixture. I'm going to add white into this. So again, I'm really flying up the colour chart here now. I'm really flying up the light spectrum. I suppose this colour does resemble that horrible colour I just ripped into. Okay, I want to work on the highlight layer here. As you can see on the shoulder pad, we have that nice gradient going on. I'm not trying to do anything extravagant with the airbrush. I'm not trying to get pinpoint highlighting with this. Just want a nice overall nuanced look. Rightio, so it's at this point we need to ask ourselves, what kind of aspect, what kind of character is this? Is he a higher up? Would he shine his armour excessively? Is he more of a frontline commander? If he's more of a, say, a Lucius or a 3rd Legion character, I'd probably work the white up a little bit more with the airbrush, and then I'd tone it back down with inks into the shadow to almost have the shading and gradation going from pure white to pure black. But being a son of Horus I should say, he's a bit more pragmatic in outlook. His armour would be dented from battle, I believe. That's the kind of character I have in my mind. So I don't want to have much... I don't want to really push the contrast with this miniature. I don't want to really push the contrast up to white and down to pure black. So because we're straddling in between those two ranges, it gives us a more nuanced, naturalistic look. But what I do want to do is just saturate that armour. Oh, I just noticed I've missed out his hand. I want to saturate the armour. At the moment, it is slightly desaturated. There's too much white in the upper layers. So I'm just going to dump out the colour from here. Have a look at a couple of questions or comments that people have. So, Andrea says, Sons of Horus Green is very dull to work with. I usually go for Lupercal, 50-50, Lupercal, Sons of Horus Green, Emerald, close to Kabalite, Sons of Horus Green. Yep. If you do want a slightly more fantastical look, a slightly more... what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, fantastical. If you want something... Okay, so Emperor's Children, highly saturated, fantastical Legion. Blood Angels, very deep arterial red, shine to a polish, saturated colours. 1,000 Suns, saturated red. If you want a slightly more fantastical look to your miniature, saturate your colours. If you want something slightly more nuanced, naturalistic, more in line with World War II modelling, maybe historical modelling, go with desaturated tones. That's why I think that Forge World colours overall are slightly desaturated. So Mass Multi Thomas, following the way you're doing Sons of Horus, if you were to do Word Bearer, would you use Galvo Black Red as the base and Word Bearer Red for the highlights, correct? Yes, I would. Yep, indeed. But we will be retreading that ground in the later tutorial, exactly how to get the best from that darker red. So Mass Multi Thomas, go, my English is terrible today, sorry. I'm a native speaker and I'm garbling it at the moment. Don't worry. Anything you want to... this isn't a place to put pressure on your English construction whatsoever. Just say what you feel, dude. It's fine. So, for this next layer, I will be using Kabalite Green to saturate the colours a bit more. Now, you don't have to use Kabalite Green. You can use any colour equivalent that you have. So Arfin Jade is another colour, a really nice colour we can use, and as you can see, they're practically the same. So I'm just going to shake these up. Which colours do you think I should use, guys? Right, I'll secretly put in my airbrush. I want you to try and guess which colour I've used. Got a little game going here. So I'm just adding this mystery colour that will not be named in here. Right, I want to really wash this right the way down, so I'm adding quite a lot of thinner in here. I want to create a wash-like consistency. So you can see just how thin this layer is. And this will boost up the saturation of the mid-tones. So I'm not really going into the higher levels, I just want to straddle along the mid-tones. There you go. Just adds a bit of colour, a bit of life to the miniature. A bit of life to that green. So as we can see, so we have Lupercal Green and our colours, Arfin Jade and Kabalite Green. Slightly more desaturated in tone, in that it has more black in the tone. More saturated because it has more of the hue, and again more of the hue in here. So we're getting that contrast between the shadows, the base tone layer, which is slightly more desaturated, and the more saturated layers in the mid-tone, and then we're sandwiching it between that upper highlight. Okay, that's looking good. I'm going to give it another pass with the green. Another cool thing about using the colours that we are using... Yeah, it was Kabalite. You're right, guys. So I need to write that down. Kabalite Green. Well done. Good eye. And this is for a commission as well, so I don't want to change the recipe we've agreed on. I think that'd be such a dick move on my part. So, use that to saturate the tones a bit more. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with the colour balance we have going on here. Now, to develop this, we will need to move on to the brush stage. I'm not a big fan of really over-developing tones and colours with an airbrush, because you could create greater depth, greater detail with a brush over an airbrush. So the airbrush tool, you should only really think of it as a sketching tool. So we've sketched in the tones here. I'm going to hit it with a hairdryer. And one of the cool things about using the colours that we have is that when it comes to the painting stage, we can grab our wet palette. So I just need to quickly make a wet palette. So in order to create a wet palette, you need a sponge-like surface. In our case, I'm using J-cloths. And then you need parchment paper, which you can buy from Marks and Spencer's, you can buy from Co-op in this country. I'm not sure where else you can, abroad, I'm not sure where you can buy it, but you need parchment paper, not baking paper. So I'm just adding this to the surface. Knot it down. And once one side has been dampened, you can switch it over. So both sides get a bit of dampness going on. And the reason why we're putting the paper down is that the membranes are semi-permeable. So it will allow moisture up through there. And then when we come to using colours, colour matching, so we can grab up a Kabalite Green. Place on our palette. And then we can say, oh, I can't believe I've almost forgot the final piece of the puzzle. So, before you start doing anything more, you need to finish off the airbrushing stages. And for this, you have... So, as I was saying earlier, when you airbrush an entire army and you mix up your own custom tones, as we have today, sometimes you can end up with slightly different tones across a collection. But we have a few unifying colours, a few unifying schemes we can attach. So to end any project, we can use Kabalite Green. That'll give a unifying colour across the entire range, and more importantly, Coelia Green shade. This stuff is amazing for Sons of Horus. Absolutely amazing. I think I'm nearly run out of this stuff. It is just that good. And this will give us a darker appearance in the shadows, and it will also unify everything across an entire collection. So I'm just cleaning up the airbrush. Yeah, I've practically run out of this stuff. I have to order more. If you are collecting Sons of Horus, buy this stuff. Just add a touch of that. You don't really need thinner in this, but I've just added a little bit of thinner to help spread it out a little bit more. And this is, whereas the Kabalite Green was bridging the gap between the upper mid-tones and the highlight, this is bridging the tones between the lower shadows and the darkest. What this will do is give it that beautiful depth and that sea green effect. It just finishes the project off. The airbrushing side of things anyway. Yeah, goddamn, I need more of that colour. It's really nice for moody armies. If you collect dark elves or dark elder, it's great. I mean, it has so many uses across an entire plethora of ranges. I need to write that down in the comments. As I do that, it gives me a little chance to have a look what you guys are saying. Oh god, how do you spell this? Coelia Nightshade. Okay. Oh, is that what give it away? Pop in the top. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Rich asks, Miles, would you lay in shadows with an airbrush over doing the greens? I'm thinking back to your Blood Angels tanks vids where you put in purple in the darkest corners. Yes. Oh, well, we've been through it already. Yes, you would. It just depends on the character of the miniature we are trying to produce. If you wanted a slightly more polished, embellished look to the armour, I would have a colour in the recesses. With Sons of Horus, because they're slightly more pragmatic, I want to use a single hue, in which case it's our Lupercal green, and control its values by adding black and white. Rather than, say, Blood Angels, which uses multiple hues across the armour, so we have red, purple, orange, and then controlling the contrast between the three of them. It's slightly more difficult. It gives a slightly more different effect, slightly more fantastical look to the armour, whereas Sons of Horus has a single hue that we modulate, rather than using different colours for that. Okay, so yes, essentially you are creating a unifying glaze to keep the army similar. Exactly. So you can use different values with the green and grey, but having these final finishing layers, these final finishing results, will give us a unified look to the miniature. And then, so I won't be painting the entire miniature in this tutorial, but I will show you an aspect of it, so you have a grounding in where to go. Now the really nice thing about using the colours that we have, using normal acrylic paints through our airbrush, we have an instant colour match we can go into. So I've got Kabalite Green. I am using, what colour is this? Ivory. It's a really nice colour because it's not quite white, but it is quite bright. Blah. Say that 5 times with my accent. Okay. You can even mix a bit of grey in there as well. So in order to do this, instead of mixing up my own, instead of getting my own bottle grey, I could just add a bit of black to the palette and then move it between the white and the green. Okay, let's make sure that you can see this. So, Kabalite Green, white, and black. So this is the colour we have. And let's start to edge highlight some of these plates. So I know edge highlighting isn't that popular with Heresy armies, but with airbrushed miniatures especially, you do need this layer just to help break everything up. What we can do, even though we might be covering this, so we could add a few scratches here and there. Now you can go full-blown detail, add every scratch by hand and then fill them in. So let's take a black and create those very fine scratches. But if you were to do this over an entire collection, I can guarantee it would drive you crazy. So, with characters like this, it is more appropriate to do these very fine detailed sketches, or these very fine detailed details. But across an entire collection, you might drive yourself a bit crazy. And oh god, I can feel myself becoming lost doing this at the moment. So I've just mixed up between black, green and white, and you move between those 3 values as you may, it doesn't matter. So in the slightly darker recesses you can add more black into that mixture. For the higher recesses you can add more green and white, just to shift between them to give a nice overall appearance to your miniature. For a quicker highlighting method, for a quicker method of creating battle damage with the armour, well, we can return to our old friend sponge chipping. So we take the sponge, we rip it up into interesting patterns, and we take, so I really like using copper for this. I've got these down. So I'm just writing down the colours. Ivory, Vallejo Black, Vallejo Copper. Okay. Add it onto the wet palette. Oh, I've dropped my sponge somewhere. No! My sponge is gone. Sorry guys, need to grab up those. Ah, it's on the floor. Ugh, stupid sponge. Okay. So I've got the sponge. Dab it off. And concentrate on areas where chipping would naturally occur. a little bit goes an awful long way. We'll make sure it's focused then. Good, yeah. And a little bit goes an awful long way. If you did want to add a chip into this. You could go through a normal process of varnishing the miniature, adding an oil wash into the recesses to create artificial shadow. If you want slightly more greater control, add black into the green and line everything yourself. For the shadow. So we're going to let this dry off in the corner, and before we finish the tutorial we'll go through light weathering, how to do it on miniatures of this size, because I see a lot of quite common mistakes made when it comes to weathering powder and really overdoing it. So let's have a look what you guys have been saying in the comments. So Daniel, how do you change the principles on painting green if you're aiming for a salamander? Would you do similar to Blood Angels and move through hues of green? Personally, I'd use different hues. So just as with Blood Angels, we use a base tone of red. So I'll just have this miniature kind of spinning in front of you while I answer this. Just as we use hues of orange, purple, and red for the armour, for salamanders you can use yellow and brown. It gives a more naturalistic appearance. It gives a more naturalistic appearance, and it imitates a lizard somewhat. But again, we could get onto that with the salamanders tutorial, which is forthcoming. Right. So, what paintbrush size are you using? A 2. So I am using a 0 from Windsor Newton Series 7. There you go. That's the paintbrush I'm using. So Rich, same questions Daniel, but for more polished Dark Angels green. So for polished Dark Angels green, I would probably use a more saturated darker green for the base coat. So I would probably go for something along the lines of a dark green. And then I'd concentrate on the manipulation of value. So I'd include more black. I'd probably use pure black for the shadows and pure white for the highlights. So a Dark Angels green would look more polished than a Sons of Horus green, who do like getting a bit more down and dirty with it over the Sons of the Lion, who like to look good over killing things. Controversial. Okay, did you use copper because of the metal trims that colour? If the trims are metallic, would you give it gunmetal from Vallejo? I just find that the warm copper colour shows up well against the cold green. It just looks nice. If you were to use a gunmetal colour, I think it would just fade into the background. It doesn't really come up as... it doesn't show up as nicely. But you could certainly do it. Yeah, give it a try. Oh no, we've come up to the hour already. Oh, okay. Well, we're going to extend this by quite a bit, so... Sorry guys if I keep you holding you, but I really want to get through the black and slight weathering techniques. So even though these are airbrush layers, even though this is an airbrush session, you can apply the same principles to brush painting. It takes slightly longer, but you can apply all the same principles to brush painting as you can with what we are doing here. So, black. Oh boy, I feel like I've written treatise on black. How to get black, what kind of black, 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 black. So what kind of black are we going to go for out just staring? Do we want a sparkly, shiny black? Do we want a highly polished black? Do we want something that's slightly grittier in tone, slightly more nuanced? So I have a couple of examples here to show you the kind of blacks we're able to achieve. So this is a very gunmetal black. This is something, it's more matte in tone. The highlights aren't contrasted with the black, with the pure shadows as deeply. There's a more all over calmer transition between the darkest points, the mid-tones and the highlight. So that's a gunmetal black. We also have a more polished black, which is, so let me show you, which we have here. So this is done all with a brush, but this is a highly polished black. So as you can see, the highlights really stand out against the shadow. It's overly polished. It hasn't been matted down. It hasn't accrued a lot of battle damage, even though there are scratches there, but you can still see that it's a shiny, ornamental armour. I am working on my own destroyers from my own Blood Angel army at the moment. So it doesn't really look that great at this current moment in time, just blocking in colours. As a play on Death Company. But as you can see on the shoulder pad, it's quite a muted black. That isn't the light from the light source above doing that. That's painted on the transition. So as you can see, it's very, very highly natural black colour. And I think this is the kind of black we want to go for with Justarin, where they're a bit more hard wearing, hard bitten, realistic, nuanced black. Maybe not as matte as this. Maybe a bit more of a shine to it. Again, there's just as I don't know where this expression comes from. It's quite a bad expression because I have a cat, but there's a million ways to skin a cat. In the same way, there's a million ways to paint black. So for this example, let's see what we can come up with. So I'm just going to hit this with a hairdryer. Okay, so let's go for a slightly more nuanced black to this guy. Black. Okay, what do we have here? So where is that color I need? It's right here. Okay, so for the base tone, let's go with, actually, let's do a bit of experimenting. So I've bought some of these colors recently. I want to give them a try. So let's give them a try. Well, I haven't bought Incubi Darkness, that's always been in my stable. So Incubi Darkness, I'm going to mix this up with black. And this is going to be our base colour, our base tone, from which to work from. So Incubi Darkness. Just write it down in the comments. And black. Fortunately, my airbrush black has run out. Because believe it or not, most of the things I paint tend to have some kind of black. I could tell this is going to explode all over the place. It's the one disadvantage when it comes to dropper bottles. Oop. You do have quite a lot of paint dry in the nozzle. It becomes very annoying to try and fish it out then. Okay, a lot thinner. That's the thinness, that's the consistency we're working with. I want an all over generalized layer of this. So I believe my first video was painting Abaddon's armour black. That's still available to view. That's a different take on how to paint black, but all blacks are valid under the sun. God, I just thought if that last comment was taken out of context and repeat, wow, that could get me in a lot of trouble. Anyway. So, just adding this on top. So I'm just pigmenting the armour with a slight amount of blue. It's very subtle, the change. There's not much of a hue transition there. Okay, just dump this out. So as you can see, I still got a little bit left in the reservoir. I haven't cleaned it out entirely. And for this I'm going to use medium blue. So, what is this? Tamiya medium blue. Okay, just give this a downward shake. Touch of thinner. Yeah, let's go for the first highlight. So I want to bridge the gap between here. So you can see the build-up of that colour. Now, I don't want to use sky grey because there's no point. I can just add white into this previous mixture to just add a bit more contrast. Okay, so we've really knocked up the layers here. It's all running out okay. Now, if I really wanted to push the contrast on this guy, if I wanted something that looked very highly polished, I could go up. I can mix more white into our solution. I don't think it would be appropriate for this model. Maybe no. I do quite like that kind of like muted black effect rather than that eye bleeding. Eye bleeding contrast we got going on that we could produce this miniature. So do I want to add another layer of white? No, I do not. So from here we can just so at the moment, as you can see, it looks quite grey. We need to knock that back. We need to knock back the we need to reintroduce more black into the undertone. And to do this, null oil. Few layers of this stuff will give us really, really nice depth into the black once more. Okay, so if we were to return back to this model, we wanted to paint the shoulder pads black, for example, yes, I would use cellophane to wrap him up to make sure there's no overspill for this. So I'll go rid of this. I'm just adding this into the shadows. So this doesn't only have to be used with Sons of Horus. You can use it with any miniature you're painting black. So we are exercising a bit of restraint here. We're not going up to really eye-gougingly, eye-bleeding levels of contrast. Instead, really nice, nuanced, calmer black. Calmer, more naturalistic black. So I'm just going to dump out this stuff from the airbrush. Now, when it comes to the shoulder pads, the red, you can mask off the shoulder pads and then paint, airbrush these red. Personally, why go to all that effort when you could just paint it with a brush? Just get this practically the same result. So, same with this guy as well, come to think of it. Why bother masking it off? You could get a really nice subtle blend with a brush. But again, it's completely up to you how you want to break up the miniature. And how you want to go about doing those things. But I want to show you how to very quickly paint in the red shoulder pads. So what kind of red are we looking for with shoulder pads, with just staring? Personally, I think a slightly darker, more desaturated red really works well. So I'm going to go with deep red. So again, single hue. I'm using a single colour and I'm controlling the values of this miniature. Of the colour, rather, I should say. So for this, I will be getting a slightly longer bristled brush. This is the Raphael 8404 0. So as you can see, even though this is a 0, same as the Windsor and Newton, vastly different brushes. More of a barrel, longer bristled, whereas the Windsor and Newton is much shorter. Okay, so this is the deep red. So you have that black and red combination going on. It's so nice. So give that time to very quickly sketch these. I know I'll be repainting those spikes. Spill over, so being as neat as I can. Blast this with a hairdryer. So, Rich asked, have I experimented with Games Workshop's gloss Null oil to modulate black armour? I'm guessing with the subsequent varnish coats anyway, the gloss doesn't stay too glossy. Exactly. When you add gloss varnish over the black, it will sink into the shadows. I want it to stay in the mid-tones. I want to have the maximum amount of control over the black. So that's why I prefer using just normal black gloss, normal black Null oil for the mid-tones. I want to control where exactly will go, where exactly will sit. Mass Multi-Thomas, Sons of Horus, a sexy legion with a colour scheme. Oh god, yeah, amazing colour scheme. Copious amounts of black. So I'm just giving a second layer to this guy. Never try and aim to paint your miniatures with one coat. I mean, this is just 2 coats on a black base coat, and it's covered it perfectly. Actually, I'll just concentrate on this shoulder pad for you guys. Okay. But the OCD in me won't let me stop with this. Okay. So, hairdryer again. Oh, good morning, Gavin. So, Gavin, one of my regular students, he's actually moved over to the States. Anybody in the States, give him a howdy or hello or whatever the colloquial term for welcome to our country is. He's just settling in. He's just waiting for his stuff to be taken over. Okay, so we have our red down. As you can see, it's quite dark. How do we go about bringing out the best in that red? How do we go about bringing out higher values and contrast? Well, very simply, let's take our ivory. Just in the same way that you'd airbrush white, I'm going to paint this with the ivory. So as you can see how I'm using the brush, I'm pushing the paint to where I want it to sit in the very highest points of light. That's crazy, doesn't it? Absolute bonkers. Why on earth am I doing this? You can also do really cool things as well once it's dried. So, in order to add artificial texture, we can just add dots. So dots of light. I'll show you how to do it on a slightly more wider layer. So as you can see, I'm just brushing the pigment to where I want it to sit. Same with the shadows. So for this example, why not use Incubi Darkness? It's a desaturated blue colour. You don't have to use purple. You can use purple if you want. No big deal. Okay. Desaturated blue colour. I'm going to add a pinch of black in there as well, just to darken it further. So why am I making these colour choices? Knowing what I know about colour theory and understanding what I do about value and contrast, I'm able to make these decisions. It's one of those things, it's easy enough to explain, but it will sound a bit like gobbledygook at first, until you start practicing it. So as you can see with the shadows, I'm just mashing the brush against it to create contrast. To get a greater understanding of value, contrast and colour theory, I do of course run a course for this individual lessons, but what I'd like you to do as an experiment, everyone out there watching this, next time you paint a skull, oh sorry, am I painting off camera? Damn, sorry about that guys. No, I'm just about on camera. Okay. So what I'd like you to do as an experiment, take a skeleton or a skull of some kind, and I'd like you to get yellow, black and white, and I want you to make a bone colour from those three. So add increasing amounts of white or black into your yellow to create a bone colour. So we do want more white in the yellow than we do black. That takes us up the higher end of the hue saturation triangle to create a bone effect. So that's what I mean by controlling hue and value. So just give it a try. Don't get your bone colour, don't rely on that. Grab yellow, any yellow will do, white and black, and mix those all three together and see what bone shades you can get. Okay, so we have a bit of a mess at the moment. What the hell have I done? Fuck. Oh, shouldn't have said that. Right, so I want to take a slightly more saturated red for the highlight layer. And I want to get Old Faithful, Sunny Skin Tone. I'm going to use these almost as wash layers. So the Antares Red. I'm going to wash this over the entire surface. It remains pink. So add another layer to make it less pink. More red. Another layer. So whose counting is that for? Got pretty good value contrast going on there. Now I'm going to go back to my original colour. I'm going to start using that as a wash. So we need to modulate the value contrast a little bit more. So I'm going to add some Sunny Skin Tone in with the Antares Red. I'll wash this up towards where I want the highest layer to be. God, are we going for another 2-hour marathon, I think, guys? No. And if I want to, I can add a few dots of colour here and there, of texture. And my original colour, red. Wash that over the surface again. Take my Antares Red, wash that towards the top. Add a slightly more Sunny Skin Tone into the highlights. go. If I so choose, I can add a bit more of the blue into the shadow, just wash contrast, but that is that. So that's how you go about producing that colour. Now, if you want to make this look like a metallic red, you simply push the contrast up from black to pure white. That's how you do that. Okay, so Andrea asks, can you please cover how to paint the War Master's eye? Yeah, sure. So how would you guys like me to paint it? Like a inset jewel or ruby? Or would you like it to be an all-over bronze patina look? So I'll just give it a couple of seconds for you guys to chime in if you have any ideas of how you'd like me to... Oh, actually I need to type in Antares Red and Sunny Skin Tone. Okay, Mass Multi-Thomas has said bronze patina. In my opinion, yep, sure. I'm just gauging for opinions. I'm happy doing it either way. I think either way would look really good. Just clean up the airbrush while you guys decide. So I'm just cleaning out the tip of my airbrush as I feel for more. So there's 11 guys watching, 11 people. All chime in. If you say whether you'd like it to be a inset ruby, or would you like it to be a bronzed patina, Eye of Horus, eye. While I do that, I'm just going to fill in the other side. Just add a bit more sunny skin tone. Bronze patina, inset ruby. Looks like bronze patina has it. Okay. Sorry, I probably should have finished off with the armor. Just simply use the base layers, use the colors you used to highlight the miniature, and use them to do... Oh, goddamn, sorry, I'm painting off screen. Just use it to highlight the miniature. Create a few scratches for wear and tear. Okay, what do we have? Glossy ruby would be cool, contrast the desaturated red. I like how you did the red, almost like your airbrush and put out there. Yeah, exactly. So the airbrush just does things a little bit quicker, but it's all exactly the same technique you can do with a brush. You saw how quickly I was able to do that. And the advantage with the brush is that we have more texture. It's easy to do lots and lots of things with the airbrush. Say if you're painting an army of just Aaron, it's way easier doing it with an airbrush then, because you save a bit of time. But individual models, you can produce a lot more contrast, you have a lot more control over the finished item. Okay, so when you do edge highlights, are you using the highest value color you use with airbrush, correct? Yes. Yep. Like to see red-yellow transition. Never thought of doing that. Yeah. Okay, so I'll tell you what, guys. I will reach a compromise. I'll do the inner layer and inset ruby, and I'll do the green patterner, bronze patterner for the outside. Perfect. So for the ruby, I'm going to sketch in the values. So let's take white. Make sure you guys can see it. Sketch it in. So I'm considering where my light source is, directly from above. So the light will naturally fade out to the edges here and naturally be brought up at the very apex here. Then I take my more saturated red. Apply this directly on top. So let's hit this with a hairdryer. Okay, so Andrea said, I'd like to see the red-yellow transition, like on the one of your posts cover. Oh, okay, I know. Okay, I know what you mean. Is there anything? Okay, I don't really have something to do with that. I can show it very briefly on here, but you're not going to really get the big impact from that. I may. So when it comes to the Sons of Horus PDF tutorial, I'll make sure that I include something along those lines in there. But there's no real place to demonstrate the like Eye of Sauron look. I guess apart from where I'm painting at this particular time. So with a richer ruby appearance, we want to go through a fuller range of hues and tones. So instead of just relying on one tone and modulating it with grey, we are instead going to maneuver ourselves around the colour wheel. So we want hot orange for the next stage. So Cannoli Crusader, I need to embrace and trust the brush more. Yep. Guys, you'd surprise yourself just how good you are with a brush. So I'm working this into the highlights. I'm applying more sunny skin tone into the mixture. Even more sunny skin tone, so we're using practically just sunny skin tone. Okay, I would like to get some violet in there. Okay, so let's go for Elandil Violet. into the shadows. I've been quite thick with my application of paint. I'm really concentrated on keeping it very smooth. This application, well, at this stage I don't really mind because I will be going in with ink. So where are you, ink? Vermilion. Let's use deep red. Actually, no, let's use Vermilion. Let's use Vermilion. So let me write these down before I forget. Elandil Violet. I have to do a spell check on this before I put it out. Hot orange. Okay. So, come on, you. So I said this session would last an hour. I always say that. I always think they're only going to last an hour. I always end up going 2 hours. So this is just a ink wash over the entire thing, and this will saturate the hell out of those tones. As you can see, the contrast between the desaturated red and the ruby red. Much greater range of values, colour tones, transitions, the lot. Hit this with a hairdryer. Just want to reapply some sunny skin tone and hot orange to the highest parts of the highlight. And then finally, pure white. There you go. That's the crystal look for the eye. Now you can go on and place some gloss varnish over the top, or even better, you can buy some Woodland Scenic realistic water effect. That is somewhere around here, but I can't find it. Oh, here you go. So, Woodland Scenic Realistic Water. It's terrible to represent realistic water, but it's great for things like this. Crystals, gems, eye lenses. Fantastic for that kind of thing. You just place a little on your brush, ease it on, and voila. I can't show it here because I won't be able to do the bronze effect. So, bronze. Let's finish up with a good bronze. And ironically, I'll be using copper for this. Grab some of this up, grab some of my copper, just add a base layer. So guys, if you do have any questions, we're rapidly approaching the end of this seminar session. So if you do have any questions on anything in miniature painting, please feel free to shoot a message below. Love to answer any questions you may have. Anything on the technique, anything you want me to cover and I haven't yet. Andrea, with the eye, I done it exactly the same way as I showed you here, only I put the highest point of light right smack bang against the darkest eye pupil. So that's how I did that. But when I do the PDF tutorial follow-up to this course, I will ensure that I have a breakdown of that there. So I'm just going to hit this with a hairdryer. Oh, behave yourself. Okay. So we have covered this in the Custodes Dreadnought tutorial. I won't have time to go through the theory here. Just kind of trust the method. I'm taking my Kabalite Green and I'm putting this into any shadowed alcoves, into any shade I want to exploit. So wherever there's a shadow, I'm including the green. Around the rivets especially. Then I'm taking purple, and this is going in the darkest recesses. So anywhere where I want absolute shadow to exist, I'm applying this. Strange, I know, but it does work. I promise you. Just what I hear somebody say, trust in the process. Yeah, I like that term. Trust in the process. So it'll look crazy at first. Just trust in the process, believe in the process. Now we need our liquid talent, Agrax Earthshade. Liberal application. Okay, we need to reapply the copper. Actually, before that, let's grab up some silver. So for this I'll be using steel and edge highlight anything. Let's give a quick edge highlight. By adding silver, we are giving the model luminosity, we're giving the armor plate luminosity. So just in the same way how I use white on top of the red, I'm using silver to preface the copper. Go back to the copper. Just putting this over the top of the silver. And then finally, to finish up, we need to take our Incubi Darkness and Green and carefully wash this around any marks on the armour, and this will create the patina. And it's just as simple as that. For simple patina, you can get a bit more involved by using baking soda. But that will give you bumps in the miniature that may not be appropriate for Son of Horus. But that is the patina effect, and that's the shoulder pad. Right, I did promise you guys some simple weathering. So we've been through chips on the armor plate. So a common mistake I see people make, well, not a mistake, something that I personally don't like to see in miniatures is that weathering powder overly applied to legs especially. So let's grab up our weathering powders. Rich asks, would you use the green, purple, shadow and silver iron metals too? No, that's just with warmer colours, golds, coppers, what have you. For silvers, I'd mix a touch, depends on the kind of silver effect you're going for. If you want a lighter, more heroic, cleaner steel look, add a touch of turquoise in with a base layer. So mix up silver with turquoise and then apply it to the miniature. You could also, instead of turquoise, use brown for a slightly oilier appearance. So with the silvers here, I've used, come on, focus in. So this, I've used a brown in with the shadows. I know it doesn't look great now, but when you start to develop the colour, it will. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they're my own miniatures, so I hope they end up looking good. Okay, so, simple weathering. You're very fortunate with Sons of Horus in that you can do a lot with the weathering. You can go with just a basic brown. So this is a dry pigment I'm just adding in. You can use a slightly warmer tone with reds. You can use a variety of different weathering powders with these guys. The green, it looks great with the green. So I've just added these. Now most people just leave it like that, and well, they really lather it on. They may use wet pigment in with it. It doesn't quite look right. So what I'd like you to do, just dab weathering. So when you apply weathering powder, dip the brush in, tap it off on an excess piece of cardboard on your finger. Then apply it to the miniature. Afterward, I want you to take a brush, ideally a flat nose brush you've given a bad Bart Simpson haircut to, dampened it. I just want you to run it down the miniature, just run it along. And this will give the effect of mud is splattered up on your miniature. He's walked. It's rained, and the raindrops have almost scoured the material away, the powder, the dirt away. So that's a very subtle transition. We don't want to really lather it onto the bottom of his trousers. We don't want to make him look like he's wearing high heel boots or anything like that. We just want a very subtle hue transition. And you're able to do that. Don't do any more to it. Leave it as it is. I know it's slightly more realistic if he was caked up to his breeches in mud or caked up to his thigh in mud, but you want to balance realism with what looks good on this scale. Again, I do exactly the same for the Son of Horus Terminator, and this would be the very last stage in the painting process. So after you've done all the metallics, after you've done the oil washes, everything, that's when you come to it. So, that is the Sons of Horus Masterclass, in which we've covered how to tackle green, Sons of Horus Green in particular, as well as Justarin Black, and we've gone through simple weathering techniques for your miniatures. And this should set you up for your entire collection to go for. So you can apply the black and red I demonstrated over to the normal Sons of Horus, and vice versa, the Sons of Horus Green over to the Justarin. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. I'll be staying on for another couple of minutes. Any more questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I will be bidding arrivederci. I believe that's goodbye. I hope it's goodbye, otherwise I've just sounded like an idiot. Should we make them kiss? No. So, Sons of Horus. I've always wanted a... Says, I say this about every Legion. I have always wanted 1,000 Suns Force. I've always wanted this. But Sons of Horus, it was a difficult decision with what collection I wanted to go for. Blood Angels, Word Bearers, World Eaters, or Sons of Horus. When I first started collecting, everybody was doing Sons of Horus at that time. Seems to have calmed down a little bit now. But, yeah, Sons of Horus were definitely... If they weren't so prevalent in my area, I would have probably gone for these guys, because they have such a wonderful collection of miniatures. The Primarch is insane. What a sculpt. God damn. Justarian Terminators, Reavers, they just got the whole lot. They've got everything. Brilliant stuff. Really glad I helped you with that, guys. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Thank you once again for being supporters of mine on Patreon. It's no understatement when I say without you guys, this just would not be a thing. I'm very happy to say that we've broken through another barrier with a Patreon, so I'll be doubling the amount of seminars I'm able to bring you. So not only am I able to bring you a fortnightly seminar, I'll be able to bring you one every single week from next month onward, assuming Patreon pledges stay as they are. Blown away. We're nearly at the maximum goal at the moment, which is humbling to say the least. I'll have to dream up more targets to hit and just give you guys more incentives, give you more things to say thank you. So if you do have any ideas for future targets, please feel free to get in touch. I'd love to hear your suggestions. With the upcoming seminars, I am thinking of breaking up into midweek. So I'll be bringing you weekends. So every second Sunday or every Sunday, I'll be doing a seminar. Or every fortnight, we're having a seminar, and then breaking it up midweek. So perhaps on a Wednesday, a Thursday, a Tuesday, having a more of an informal question and answer session rather than something like this. So I'm able to just host questions from you guys. And whatever you'd like to know, I'm able to demonstrate any techniques thrown at me on the fly. So again, thank you so much, guys, for being a part of this, and I will catch you next time. Oh, if you have a catchphrase, I can say. I always feel I never know when to end these things, like on what note to end it by. I know exactly what I can say for this. Death to the false emperor. Bye.